Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Greetings all, my name is Byron Lafayette, and you are listening to Under the Lens with Byron Lafayette, where we cover entertainment, literature, and everything in between. We do interviews, movie reviews, TV reviews, and we just chat about generally what interests us and hopefully you as well. Today, I'm very excited to have a special guest with me today for this episode where we're going to be talking about the swashbuckling film, The Count of Monte Cristo. I've been planning on having this guest on the program for a long time. We've been talking about like various different movies and different things to talk about. And we finally settled on doing who was the best Batman. And then I told him, I said, well, you know what? I'm waiting until Batgirl releases for SEO purposes. And obviously for reasons which I'm sure everybody knows, that time was never going to come. And so I figured we needed to do something soon. So I'm very happy to introduce my friend and colleague, Aaron White. And I'm going to let Aaron introduce himself and his podcast. And thanks, Aaron, for coming on the show.
Oh man, thank you. No, I'm hyped. I'm glad that we finally were able to find something to talk about, and it's kind of in a roundabout way. It's excellent choice because some of the other things are fun. It would be fun to talk through the Batman, and we can still do that eventually. But this is definitely much more in my personal wheelhouse for what I do. I have a podcast that has been running about 6 years now called Feel and Film. I'm a member of the Seattle Film Critics Society. I am here in Seattle, the Independent Film Critics of America, a couple of other smaller organizations as well. We put out episodes every single week. My best friend and I, we do a deep dive into a movie very similar to what we're going to do here. We kind of try to take more of an emotional perspective than a technical one. We don't get too wrapped up in the weeds of awards and things like that when we do our episodes. And then I also do weekly new release reviews, which I am doing on a spoiler-free basis at the moment, just recording those by myself. And then we have other fun content that we do movie drafts. We started up a YouTube channel and put our latest movie draft up on that, the video of that. So that was fun. And I'm currently covering The Rings of Power as well with one of our team members who is also a huge Lord of the Rings fan. It's my favorite IP, so I'm excited that we have that kind of side project going on. And so I basically live in the podcasting world in my free time. It's movies and talking about them, or I guess and TV.
That is awesome, and I was very happy when I heard that you guys were going to be covering The Rings of Power because I've just been enjoying that show so much, and so I need to go back and catch up now on those episodes because. Weirdly enough, a lot of people I know actually were not really doing episodes on that. And so I was excited when I was like, oh, you guys are going to cover that. So now launching into our topic at hand, which is the Count of Monte Cristo, we're going to start out by kind of just going over a little bit of what our personal experience was with this movie. Like when we first saw it, just kind of like what feelings did it stir up, what we liked about it, that kind of stuff. And then once we move on past that, we'll be going on to some facts and just kind of breaking down a few different scenes and things like that. So I'm going to have our guest today start off with his experience. So how did this movie affect you? How did you come to find it? When did you first see it? Fill me in on all of that.
Well, it's interesting because I absolutely love the swashbuckling genre. I have a soft spot for it. Growing up, there was a run of movies that this was kind of one of them, and they all blended together. There was this period of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and The Three Musketeers, and then this film. And several other adaptations that were all just kind of tangential to one another in that swashbuckling way. And then we didn't get anything like that for a long time afterwards. And my memory of this was that I was certain I had read the book. I went through a huge kind of French classical literature phase coming out of high school, and I was reading all of Victor Hugo and a lot of Alexander Dumas, and I assumed therefore that I had read this. I sat down to rewatch this movie back in, I think it was around 2020, and I couldn't remember anything. To be honest with you, I don't know that I'd ever seen it before that viewing. It literally was like watching something new to me. I think that I got it confused with The Man in the Iron Mask, which feels a lot like this, but obviously totally different story. So I feel like I got to experience it almost brand new just here recently within the last couple of years, and it was amazing. Just getting to kind of go back in time when we got more like this, this is a very classical Hollywood adventure. You know, it's got revenge, it's got a love story, it's got mercy and justice as core principles that are being explored. It's got sword fighting, even though there's not nearly as much as you might assume. And it's got historical aspects to it. And it really just is a movie that I resonate with because of the ideas that its characters are trying to show us, what we learn through, Edmond Dantès, and what we get to experience through his POV, as he's losing everything and then going through this journey of trying to both get it back, but also figure out where he needs to fall between those concepts of justice, mercy, revenge. And so I love it. I think that it is just top to bottom so well made. And Kevin Reynolds in general, who is the director and also directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, also an absolute favorite movie. I think it's just so underrated.
That's excellent. I have a, very similar experience in the sense that I love this movie. And, I had ended up, like, I read the book, I want to say when I was it was in high school, I believe. I was a member of this organization called 4-H. It was kind of this youth development. Yeah, you know what it is. And I was a member of that, and my local kind of district had created this new competition mode for our demonstration day that was called dramatic reading. And at the time I had been reading Count of Monte Cristo, and I just loved the book. I just remember, I was just couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next on the page. It almost felt like this kind of like a Batman, almost, in the sense of, just being this guy who's super wealthy, and just, all the different things he's doing, and all the, machinations that he's doing with his plan. And I loved it. And I thought, oh, I think I'm going to do a dramatic reading based off of this. And I ended up doing, the reading on when he escapes Château. And it was so much fun. And I had a great time with it. I remember the judges all liked it and stuff, but that was kind of like my earliest, memory of kind of with the book, and experience with that. And I ended up not seeing the movie, though, for quite some time. That I want to say, the film came out in 2002. I want to say I didn't see it until probably the late 2000s. So I want to say it was probably around like 2011 or 12 or so. Was when I was in college. I saw it. And I remember just kind of thinking like, oh man, I liked the book. I remember thinking like, oh, I've never seen this movie. And, I watched it and I just like fell in love with it. Like, I love swashbuckler films, as any longtime listener of the podcast or anyone who follows me on social media knows. I'm a bit of a fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Oh yes.
And Aaron knows. And so just like anything with like sword fighting in that era, it's just kind of just has this big like romantic feel to it for me. And just I have a soft spot for it. And yeah, this film was it was so well made. It handled so many themes well. And it's one of the rare movies that I say that I view it almost as good as the book, that I view it almost on the same level. And I say that too in such a it's such a strange way of saying it, because the movie is so different from the book. Like it's almost two different stories in the sense of the way the screenwriter had changed it, because I would venture to say the book is almost unfilmable in the sense, because it's just the way it's written, it's not cinematic. And I thought the screenwriter did such a great job that when I watched it, I was like, he captured the spirit of the novel exactly, while also making it into this cinematic experience that was so great. And so I just ended up loving it, and I revisited it a few times over the years. And then when I watched it again for this podcast, I just was like, oh, it was like even better than I remembered it.
Yeah, I think it
Know,
ages so well. And to your
it
point
does.
about the book, like the book is obviously lengthy. If people who have not like seen it in a physical space, it is a big book. It is. I don't remember how many pages it is, but it's long. And so, there's so much more character depth and detail to every location that they go to than you could ever fit into a 2.5 hour movie. And one of the common questions that I hear come up on a lot of podcasts these days is, what would this be like, or would this work as a series? And I feel like this sort of storytelling, much like fantasy, much like a Lord of the Rings, really would be served well by high production serial storytelling, because you could split this out over 10 episodes and it would have enough there character wise to provide depth.
Easily.
There's moments of intrigue. There's the the one that ends in revenge, the episode, the episode that ends in some mercy, etc. And you could actually film almost a beat for beat, adaptation that way. And there's certain genres that I think just really benefit from that structure, and this would be one of them.
I absolutely agree, because I actually thought about that when I was watching the movie. I was like, man, this would be an interesting, TV series. And I really do like the whole idea of serialized storytelling, because, even though I still have a very much of a soft spot for procedural, like quote unquote monster of the week, I enjoy those, growing up with NCIS and all that kind of stuff. I really do enjoy, being able to take a long form novel or a story and really splitting it up and just going, it's almost reminds me a little bit of the Bosch novels and how Amazon was able to turn those into fantastic seasons of television that were just, you were hanging on to, the edge of your seat with, every episode. And so I would love to see a large budget TV adaptation of the Count of Monte Cristo. I think that would be so interesting. To be able to see all of those elements of the novel come out, because kind of, as you said, like, the novel itself, it doesn't fit into a 2 hour or 2.5 hour movie. It just doesn't work. You would need a lot more time to explore that. So yeah, that would be very, very interesting. Just as a fun question onto that, which platform, streaming platform do you think would be best to handle something like that, in your opinion? Like, which would you like to see it on?
I mean, at this point, everything to me needs to go to HBO or Amazon Prime. Those are the two that I believe have the budgets to create the full-on worlds that I would like to see. However, as a side pick, because I feel like they're almost a given, but of the rest, I'm actually a fan of period piece storytelling series that have popped up on, what is it? Is AMC Plus, I want to say?
Oh,
I think it's AMC Plus. So they've done some stuff that's in this vein. There's I can't even remember some of the shows that I've checked out on there, but there's a treasure hunting show, modern day, one that has some sea-based elements to it. Some kind of almost like Robert Langdon, Da Vinci Code story, like secrets that are, trying to find it's very Nathan Drake like without the action. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then they've done, I want to say, is it called the North Sea maybe? But they've done some things that are that show me that they could handle this level of, or this type of setting, because it doesn't need quite the budget that, even though I would like it, I would like everything to have a huge budget just because, but it doesn't need, like, it doesn't have dragons, right? You don't have to CGI dragons in, you don't have to make elves and orcs and Sauron, etc. So you could do this on a lower budget. So I'd say AMC Plus.
Man, that's a great great suggestion, because I've actually not checked out AMC Plus, so I'll have to check that out now. Because there's a lot of, like, some of the smaller platforms that have done a great job of doing stuff, like just off the top of my head. Also, I feel like Stars has done a decent job with some of their period stuff.
Yeah, they did Spartacus, right?
Yes, they did Spartacus.
The pirate show.
Yeah, Black Sails. Yeah, Black Sails. And they have done a series. I've only seen one of them, the Spanish Princess they did, and I think they did the White Queen and some of those other ones. And I can't speak to all of them, but I remember the Spanish Princess was pretty decently done, if I remember correctly.
Are those in the same adaptation series as the other Boleyn Girl? And I feel like they might be. I don't know.
Yeah, I have not looked it up, but I've wondered, because we have, like, they have, like, the White Queen. I think they have, like, the Serpent Queen now, the Spanish Princess, and there was one other one. And I feel like they're all in the same universe. That's what it feels like, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look that up.
It is. That's a good question. Just checked. Yes, it's based on Philippa Gregory's historical novel series, which I believe also is what the other Boleyn Girl, the movie. Yeah, I went through a phase. I've loved this sort of period type stuff. One of my favorite shows of all time was The Tudors, for that reason, and I liked Rome back in the day. There's a series called Rome on HBO that ran for a couple of seasons. So yeah, anything in this kind of era and style is really fun.
Well, going into kind of the brief film overview of this, The Count of Monte Cristo was released in the year 2002. It was directed by Kevin Reynolds, as Aaron said, who also did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which is a great movie. It was written by Jay Wolpert, and there's actually some interesting facts about him that we're going to talk about a little bit later that just make him as the screenwriter even more interesting. It starred Jim Caviezel in the lead role, and a lot of you may recognize him as obviously playing Jesus Christ in The Passion of the Christ. And he was also in a fairly decent science fiction show called Person of Interest. It also starred Guy Pearce, Richard Harris, Henry Cavill, and Luis Guzman. The music was composed by Edward Shearmer, I believe that's how it's pronounced. And the cinematography was by Andrew Dunn. And the synopsis for the film, as stated by IMDb, is very simple. A young man falsely imprisoned by a jealous friend escapes and uses a hidden treasure to exact revenge. Very simple, but exactly what the movie is about. The tagline for this movie was "Prepare for adventure, count on revenge." So they definitely liked their puns there. Yeah. Absolutely. It was rated PG-13. Its runtime was 2 hours and 11 minutes. And its box office, it earned a worldwide total of $75.4 million. And that was on an estimated budget of $35 million. So the film was a modest success. It wasn't a massive hit, but it definitely didn't lose money at the box office. And also, interestingly enough, I did a little bit of research, but I wasn't able to find any. I was curious to see what the rental and physical media sales were, because this was released at the time when, obviously we still had Blockbuster, we still had Hollywood Video, and DVD sales were really high at this point. And so I suspect this film probably did very well on physical media, but I wasn't able to find any stats on numbers.com for that.
Well, it's not really available now. I can tell you that. I went to buy it. When I rewatched it for the podcast, I was like, you know what, I need to own this. Surely there's like a nice 4K, or if there's not, there's got to be a Blu-ray with some special feature. No, doesn't exist. I was very upset.
Yeah, it is very, very hard. I was able to track down a Blu-ray copy, like an old Blu-ray copy of it.
Okay.
And definitely, like, I'll see if I can find the link to send it to you, because yeah, it's definitely worth getting because it looks good, and also it has a bunch of special features on it of
Oh,
how they
okay. Well, that's
made
what I
it, and
want.
it's super
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, yeah, like it's not like terribly long, but I want to say like the making of was like probably a good 40 minutes at least, and it was really interesting, like interview with the screenwriter and stuff. So yeah, I'll see if I can find you the link of where I bought it and send it to you because it's definitely worth it. So the critical reception on Rotten Tomatoes was 73% positive critic rating and an 88% positive audience rating. So this was one of those few movies that actually was pretty much well received by everyone. And the critical consensus came out saying, though it may not reach for any new artistic heights, The Count of Monte Cristo is an old-fashioned yet enjoyable swashbuckler. And I definitely enjoy. It's very, very enjoyable. I would take a little bit of a point when they say like it doesn't reach any new artistic heights, because I do think actually the film artistically was very good. But we'll get into that a little bit more. So. Now, moving on here to some fun facts, and we'll talk about some of these. Were you aware, Aaron, when you like went in to like watch this movie, that this was the 17th adaptation of the book?
That's insane. No, absolutely not. I mean, there shouldn't be 17 adaptations of anything. I don't even know if there are 17 adaptations of Batman. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
I was, because I honestly thought when I was doing the research, I was like, I know there was one back in like 1935 or something like that.
Right.
One of those like Douglas Fairbanks type ones. And then when I looked it up, I was like, wait, 17 of these?
Goodness gracious.
Oh, because I agree with you. There should not be that many adaptations for anything. That is just way, way too much. Now, the screenwriter, Jay Wolpert, weirdly enough, was actually a winner on the game show Jeopardy back in the 70s. And he also was a longtime producer for The Price is Right.
Wow.
Yeah, like I was very surprised by that because, like, when you think of like a game show producer and somebody who spent their whole career producing game shows, you don't really think The Count of Monte Cristo.
No, totally different vibe.
Yeah, like totally different. Now, funny enough, what I learned was that at I believe it was at one point in his life as a producer, he actually had an intern who a lot of people may recognize the name Nancy Myers. She, is famous for a lot of like romantic comedies and like romantic dramas and stuff. Some great films that she's made. And the story went that he said he ran into her over the course of 20 years, and they would like, they'd talk and everything. And he said that he ran into her one day at lunch, and they were talking, and he said that she just kind of out of the blue just said, "How come you never wrote?" And he kind of didn't really know. And he said he just kind of started dabbling a little bit. And ended up that the Count of Monte Cristo was his first script that he ended up selling to Disney.
Wow.
Which I thought was just, very, very interesting. And then also what a lot of people may not also know, and this goes into my other swashbuckling interest, is that he actually wrote the first script for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like pretty, yeah, like it kind of goes when you see like the work he did on like Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, like it's definitely, he had that kind of that touch and that feel. Now it ended up that he did not get screenwriting credit for the Pirates film, even though he created most of the characters and the plot line and everything. That it ended up going through a bunch of rewrites. With, I want to say they said it went through like 3 or 4 other writers. And so he ended up only getting a screen story credit, which, it's anyone who knows the business knows that, when things go through rewrites, you don't always get the credit that you may think you deserve or even possibly do deserve.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about that with him, like going from, like The Price is Right to this type of storytelling?
I mean, the only thing I could even say is talented people tend to be talented and find a way to express that in multiple different ways.
Mhm.
And so it's not surprising to me in that regard that someone who is smart enough to win Jeopardy, and talented enough to write a movie like The Count of Monte Cristo as a first screenplay would be able to successfully produce one of the most, if not, right there with Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune is the three most recognizable, long running, most successful game shows really in the history of TV.
Mhm.
And so that makes kind of sense, sort of.
Mhm.
It's the closest we can get to making sense of it. And it's really weird. The Pirates thing. Yeah. I mean, it's a bummer. It's too bad that he didn't get more noted credit outwardly for that, because they are so much just almost, I mean, they just live in the same type of story world. I would wonder what the screenwrite or what the edits looked like, because my guess is, having, the Count of Monte Cristo as a reference, that it's probably likely that more of the jokes came later, because Count of Monte Cristo has some wonderful comedy to it, but it's not comedy. It's lines that are funny because they're ironic, or the things that happen in the film then make a certain line of dialogue kind of funny in hindsight or whatever. It's not jokes for the sake of, it's a little different than the tone of Pirates. And so my question would be is, I wonder if that's what got added into it later.
I wondered the same thing, yeah, and it could be also maybe some of the more supernatural elements maybe were added a little bit later. Maybe his story was a little bit more pirate focused, possibly. Who knows? But I definitely agree, because yeah, the humor is there in Count of Monte Cristo, but like you said, it's not the same type of humor. I always think of Luis Guzman's character. When he's like, "Well, are we going to spend the money?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "I need revenge." And he's like, "Okay, I will go and kill them myself, and then we'll spend the money." It's like there's some great interactions there. But so the next interesting fact about this movie was the lead, Jim Caviezel, and Henry Cavill were both in, obviously, this movie. Henry Cavill plays his son, and kind of just a weird kind of twist was that both of them were actually considered for the role of Superman. Jim Caviezel was actually one of the top picks for Bryan Singer's Superman Returns in 2006. And Henry Cavill actually was considered for that as well. So it's kind of interesting that both of them were viewed for that. Cavill, of course, went on to be cast as Superman in Man of Steel, and followed that up in Batman versus Superman and Justice League. And who knows, he might be in Black Adam. We don't know. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Aaron, of Jim Caviezel as Superman? Like, can you see that, or are you not able to see that?
It's really hard for me to see or not see people as superheroes, I'll be honest, because I am a pretty forgiving film critic or fan, both. Just when I watch movies, I tend to like more than I don't and accept more than I don't. And I think most actors, are able to pull things off to some extent. And I like most of the Supermans we've had. And I like, I like the different Batmans that we've had. I don't like the fights as much, because I can see value in all of them, and they all tend to fit in their own worlds for the most part. Not always. I think Jim Caviezel is a phenomenal actor, and if you gave him the right Superman movie, he could be awesome. I do think that. Yeah. I think it would have to be a much more serious Superman movie. Like, I could see him, in more of a Zack Snyder type of Superman role than I could ever see him in some of the stuff that came before. Just the more campy you get, the more lighthearted and comic book, I don't know, lightness to it. He's not going to thrive in that. But when you're in the darker exploration of the character, the serious aspects of him that he's wrestling with his own identity and stuff, like that's the part where I think he would be able to do really well.
Definitely agree. Yeah, because I definitely was having some trouble viewing him almost in like the Superman Returns a little bit, but like you said,
Yeah,
like almost like a Man of Steel style, or even like I saw an article where somebody mentioned they were like, they're like, even now they're like they should cast him for an Elseworlds version of like Kingdom Come, and I was like, oh yeah, Kingdom Come, like style Superman with him would be awesome. So I definitely agree. So now talking about a little bit of a fun fact with a particular scene in the film, that there is a scene where one of the villains of the film, Villefort, is basically disgraced. His crimes are found out, and he is on his way to prison. And when he gets into the wagon, he sees there's a gun next to him, and basically that there was two versions of this scene, and the first scene basically was he sticks the gun in his mouth, he pulls the trigger, and it clicks, and then you see the Count come over the window and say, did you think that I would make it easy for you, or some variation of that. It was a fantastic scene. But there was actually another version that the director Kevin Reynolds did, one where the gun was loaded and he actually kills himself. And the director felt that actually worked better, and he had that in the original cut. However, according to some of the sources with test audiences, who didn't have any knowledge of the existing footage of him not killing himself, they felt that it was better if the gun was not loaded, and they preferred that version of the scene. I'm assuming there was probably some questions asked, and so it ended up that they added the previous scene in. So, like, Aaron, which version of that scene would you prefer? Do you think the one in the theatrical was the best, or do you think that that alternate scene is better?
Well, you already know my answer because I immediately messaged you literally when I was rewatching the movie, and I was like, dude, or maybe I posted on Facebook something. We talked about it somewhere when it happened, when I saw it, because I absolutely love the way that it ended up in the theatrical version. I was waiting for the death and for it not to come and to get that zinger. I just think it is so much more in line with the wonderful, wonderful, just dark quote that Edmond says to Jacopo when he says, "What do you want to buy?" And he says, "Revenge."
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, "Death is too good for them. They suffer as I suffered. They must see their world, all they hold dear, ripped from them as it was ripped from me." And to me, this is what has to happen for you to reach that level for this character, right? Like, I mean, there's different ends that each of the villainous characters meets, but you need it couldn't be easy. It has to be extra painful. And he's not getting the equivalent. He's not getting all they hold dear is not being ripped away from him if he's just allowed to, depart his existence on earth. Now he has to go suffer the shame of the fall from grace, the fall from being this important leader with all of this money and wealth and prestige and this important father, and his whole family is going to be called into question. He's going to be arrested. He's going to go to prison. Like, it is a much, much worse fate. And to do it in a way that taunts him, it's one of my favorite top 5 scenes in the whole movie. I just absolutely love it.
I definitely agree with you. I think it was a fantastic scene. It goes very well with the quote, of what Edmond says earlier, and also what I really like is that I kind of like the duality a little bit of that, the fear that Villefort had with his father being a Bonapartist, and that he was scared of, like, oh, I'm going to be put in prison. Oh, shame is going to come down on my family. All of that ended up happening to him because of what he did. And it was just poetically brilliant, I think. Let's see. So one of the other interesting facts, and I think this kind of stuff does happen on on movies occasionally is that during one of the fencing scenes between Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce, apparently a move was performed incorrectly, and Pearce was accidentally stabbed in the side. And he ended up being taken to the hospital. He was okay, and he was patched up. And yeah, and reportedly he was bragging about the wound proudly, that it was like it was like, okay, he got this from like working hard in the film. And I guess like Caviezel just felt terrible, I guess, about it. Yeah,
that seems very consistent with both of their personas, just in general, as human beings. In general, like I love Guy Pearce. I loved being able to see him here. One of my first thoughts was, man, why is this guy not in more movies? Because I miss the Guy Pearce era.
Me too.
He chews it up in this movie so well, and the sword fight. It's not surprising to me. Like I wrote down a note that said, "Seriously, sword fighting looks so painful." So there we go. Like I just can't imagine living in a time where this was how you settled your differences. Like, no, thank you. I mean, I would. I mean, I'd rather just be shot by a sniper across the and not know it happened. This is crazy.
It is absolutely true, because sword fighting on its own is so it's very personal. It's very it's up close, and I can there was a bit of a in the special features kind of about how they filmed the sword fights and just the incredible amount of training that they had to go through, and just and how the one duel, the final duel at the end of the film, how it took them, almost a month of training basically in order to do that. And the fencing expert said, basically he said, I always get a little worried, when they go to start filming it, because he said they're so good at what they're doing. They've been practicing for so long. He's like, that's when things go wrong, And of course, obviously something did go wrong a bit, in the sense that he stabbed him in the side. But yeah, it was it was a fantastic fencing scene. And I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit later with some of our scene analysis. And our final fun fact here was that the screenwriter, Jay Wolpert, actually came up with an idea that was not present in the novel. And that was that Fernand Mondego, which is Guy Pearce's character, and Edmond Dantès started out as best friends, as childhood friends. And that wasn't that way in the book. But his logic was that he felt it worked better as a buddy film that then turned sinister, because he said that he believed that when a friendship soured, the hate that was generated from that would end up being way more terrible and way more believable than just two enemies who didn't exactly know each other and were just brought together by circumstance. And so do you agree with him there? Do you think that was a good element to add to the story?
I do. And it actually bleeds into something I thought about when watching it. And it was a question I kept coming back to, of they are shown to us in the beginning, and it's kind of told to us, because we don't get to see too much of them before things go south. And we're led to believe, obviously, that they are close friends. And yet the jealousy that leads Fernand to this extreme betrayal makes me question the friendship in the first place. Like, retroactively, I wonder, like, were you ever friends? And can you really call yourself that if this whole time you were so consumed with jealousy, and you were so, well, I guess he wasn't consumed with it the whole time. He was fine when Edmond was just the son of a clerk or whatever, because that's what he says. He says, because you're the son of a clerk and I'm not supposed to want to be you. That's Fernand's reasoning for why he betrays him. It's all about envy and this belief that they can be best friends as long as I'm the man of a higher station. And I just question, is that really a friendship at all? So I love it because it makes me think about that. And I wouldn't even have that aspect of the film to confront if this wasn't a choice that got made. And I do think that it adds a ton. I actually can't even imagine this. I didn't read the book, because I thought I had, but I didn't. And I can't imagine it having the same effect if they didn't have a relationship like this prior.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it strengthened the narrative, and like you said, I kind of also called into question of, like you said, were they ever really friends? In the first place, because that envy, that he had, for Edmond, and like what Mercedes, kind of says about how you were so, that the one summer or something like that, he's like, where you got a pony and Edmond got a whistle. And then she says, and you were so angry that he was more happy with his whistle than you were with your horse. And it was such an interesting character dynamic for him of that he was so jealous of the life that Edmond had, even though it was so much poorer, it was so much less grand than what he had. And it was a great foundation, I think, for that rivalry and that betrayal that ended up coming. And I think, it added so much more pain, because, Edmund was so guileless, really. He was a nice guy. He was almost naive in some ways, you can say, with trusting people. He trusted Napoleon, and he trusted Villefort, and he trusted his friend. And then, everything was turned on him. And then we get to see him kind of go a little bit more into that jaded side, before he comes back around at the end. So now we're going to move on to a section of our review called Quotes That Stuck With Us. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the various quotes that the film has, because it has a lot of good quotes in it. It has a lot of great interactions with characters. So we're going to talk about a few of them, kind of what our thoughts were on them. So the first one that we're going to start with is a moment with Edmond Dantès where he gives a toast for his. At that point, he doesn't know it's his son, but his son's 16th birthday party, and kind of a little bit of a background for anybody who may not have seen the movie with listening to this. I can't imagine why you would be listening to it, though, if you hadn't seen the film.
Thank you. Thank you anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
You're
Thank
welcome
you
here.
Thank you for the listens. But then after it's over, go watch the movie. That basically, that Guy Pearce's character is this kind of like absent father who doesn't really like his son, or his non-son, I guess you could say. And he basically just ignores him and doesn't go down to give the toast, which would have been horribly humiliating in front of all of their friends. And his mother, Mercedes, is going to give the toast for him, but then Edmond jumps in to basically save the day and save his dignity. And he gives this great quote where he says, "Life is a storm, my young friend. You will bask in the sunlight one moment, be shattered on the rocks the next. What makes you a man is what you do when that storm comes. You must look into that storm and shout as you did in Rome, 'Do your worst, for I will do mine.' Then the fates will know you as we know you, as Albert Montague the man." It's just a great quote. And what did you think? What did you think of that, Aaron?
Well, so one thing that I'm trying to remember, does he know yet at this point? I don't think he knows that Albert is his son, correct?
He does not know. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be somewhat cynical in my view of this. It is a phenomenal quote in a vacuum. And I love the dialogue and the script of this entire movie. I think that is one of the things that makes it so great. I think he largely is not saying all of this in a way that is intended to necessarily save the day for Albert. I think he is prepping him for the eventual capture, the eventual kidnapping, and he is trying to kind of quietly influence this young kid's reactions so that he will eventually fight against his own dad. Like, he is trying to sow discord within this family.
Oh,
with this
100%. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so that's my, so I'm glad that, okay, good. It's not just me being cynical then. It is how it's meant to be. Because I definitely feel that. It's like, it's almost like a dual purpose, right? That's one side of it. And the other side is him being able to outwardly express secretly through this quote directed at Albert, how he is feeling and his emotional state, because this is what he obviously went through and what he has done. And so, yeah, super powerful and phenomenal, like toast scene.
Definitely. Yeah. And I definitely agree with you that at that moment it's not meant to be a fully philanthropic quote. He's telling a little bit of almost like his life story, in the sense of, that he was basking in the sunlight, then he was shattered on the rocks. And, and like you said, he's basically kind of saying, that this is going to happen to you. Basically, I'm going to, your life is going to be destroyed, basically, and hopefully you'll get through it, So the next quote is actually, one that is probably my favorite, I think, in the film. And it's an interaction between Edmond Dantès and the prisoner who he meets in Château. And it's let's see, it's Abba. Let's see.
Abba Faria.
Yes, Faria. There we go. I was trying to figure out how to not butcher that. And where Abba, he says, here is your final lesson. He says, do not commit the crime for which you now serve the sentence. God said, vengeance is mine. Edmund then says, I don't believe in God. And he replies, well, it doesn't matter. He believes in you. And it was a quote that I really liked in the film. It goes great with the moment, and kind of that duality of showing kind of who the two characters were at that moment, and just a little bit of background for this quote for people who may not know that, Edmund is somebody who does believe in God in the beginning of the film, and he even says at one point where he's being beaten by the warden. He says that, that God is everywhere. He sees everything, and he believes that God is going to give him justice. And when the warden basically starts to beat him and says, well, basically, let's make a bargain. He said, ask God for help and I'll stop when he comes down and saves you. And obviously he's not saved, and he loses his faith. And so this quote, I think, is really good, because it kind of adds, I don't know, it kind of adds almost that little bit of a seed in him that all hope is not lost, and that, God is still there even if he doesn't believe in him. And so did you like that quote? Did you think that it worked in that moment in the film?
Best quote in the movie. It's so oftentimes I will lead my Letterboxd reviews with a quote, like a favorite quote from a film, and that's the one that I wrote at the top of this one, because it's the thing that stuck out to me. It is the whole synthesis of the entire film, like boiled down into a single 2 sentences, in my opinion. This, like you said, you express it all perfectly going through that whole section. I love that quote from Dorliac. I love how that works, where he's like, let's make a bargain. I'll stop when God shows up. The moment he shows up, it's just such a crushing when he says that, and you just know, you're watching this and you're just like, this guy truly believes like he's going to get through this. And this is one of the strengths of the film, is the way it shows the progression of the years and how it wears him down. And like you said, he, carves God will give me justice on the cell wall, and he tries to cling to that. And that is what this is all about, is like clinging to these values or this faith that you have. And in the midst of extreme persecution and things that are going horribly in your life, and in this case out of your control, where will you go? What will you end up with? And I think it's gotta be the reason that Caviezel ends up getting cast as Jesus. I will not believe otherwise, because to me, this whole section in the tower, like, or in the prison, it's like, it is Jesus. You could put him there, and so, yeah, I just think it's so just wonderful. Like, both of those performances, the way the lines are delivered, it's wonderful. And it really does stick with you, especially if you're a person of faith yourself. I know I am, and I have gone through those periods where I don't know that I would ever say I didn't believe in God, but I've questioned things, and just the simple response of he believes in you, like a reminder that, like, it doesn't matter if like, it does matter, but ultimately in the characters' minds, like God is going to exist, and he believes you can do things that even you don't yet fully believe you can do. And it's just super inspiring and optimistic.
And I definitely agree, and I think what you just said is just a perfect, summing it up of where you said that he believes in you being able to do things that you don't realize you are capable of, and it is so true, because obviously, when we go through, bad things, and as you said, I've definitely gone through my own share, you're only seeing kind of, it's almost like you have glasses on that are just completely blank, just completely blacked out. And so you're only seeing what's right in front of you, and you don't see any way out of it. And it was kind of like with Edmond, that it was just kind of like, he was done, and I agree with you. It's just a totally powerful quote. And I think it sums up the movie, and it is my favorite as well. And I think that, well, you know what? We'll go on to one. We'll jump down to the other quote first and talk about that one, and then we'll go back to the last one, because I think the last one kind of is a good point to finish the quote section up on. But we mentioned already a little bit the warden Dorliac, who's just a horribly evil person. It's like, and he reminds me a lot of ways of there's a term. It was used by a journalist when she was covering elements, some of the Holocaust trials, where she called it the banality of evil. And and basically just kind of saying that some of these people were not necessarily the monstrous mustache twirling villains that you necessarily expected. They were just kind of the everyday bureaucratic evil, committing horrible acts. And Dorliac, to me, just kind of perfectly sums that up, that he's just a guy doing his job, and he just likes being a bad guy and causing pain and torment to people in his everyday bureaucratic job.
And Kevin Reynolds, it was so smart for casting Michael Wincott.
Oh.
So Michael Wincott is, not had many memorable roles, but the two he had, this and Guy of Gisborne in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, are so adjacent to each other. Like they are the same character, and it's brilliant. And he is as good as anybody could be at this, like in this single small character role. He is like an A+ doing both of them. And I think because of what he did in Robin Hood is why Kevin Reynolds was like, no, you're obviously the guy for this. And he was so right.
I definitely agree, because like, even though he has limited screen time, I mean, he completely squeezes that role for all it's worth, and he pulls every bit out of it, and just creates a very memorable villain, for one who probably only has about maybe 5 minutes of screen time total. It's a great one. And he has this one quote where it's near the beginning where Edmond meets him for the first time, and he says basically, "I know you must hear this all the time, but I'm innocent." And Dorliac replies and he says, "Well, my dear Dantès, I know perfectly well that you are innocent. Why else would you be here? If you were truly guilty, there are 100 prisons in France where they would lock you away, but Château d'If is where they put the ones they're ashamed of."
Oh, so good.
Oh,
the
yeah,
writing is so good.
It's so good. Oh, yeah. It's like that quote. It was so interesting. And it was just such a great look at a lot of times how governments work, and especially corrupt governments,
Well, I feel like that's when you start to get really broken right there. And that, at least that's when I feel it as a viewer for Dantès, is I'm like, oh, if they're so open about it that he can just outwardly tell him that straight up to his face, like, that he's done, he's toast. Like, he's not getting out. And that's the intent, right? Is to create despair, to create a lack of hope in these prisoners. And then, like, beyond that, to be sadistic and punish them for pure pleasure, which is completely unnecessary. But yeah, it is. The delivery of it is phenomenal. And again, just the writing is so descriptive and pitch perfect.
It absolutely is. And it made me wonder a little bit just with, some subtext, because sometimes I like to look at subtext and read between the lines of characters in films. And it made me wonder almost, and I would have loved to have been able to ask the screenwriter while he was still with us, if he intended this or not. But it's like, it almost kind of felt like Dorliac himself was almost written as almost a prisoner himself, in the sense that, like, for some reason he was sent to Chateau d'If as a punishment, that this was not the prestige warden position that everybody wants, that it was like, that it almost seemed like he was sent away for something as a punishment to that place, and then was taking out all of that despair and anger that he had himself on everybody else. So, like, that's just reading between the lines a little bit, but it made me wonder if that was an intention of the screenwriter or not. Let's see. All right, so going on to our final quote here, and I think that this kind of like, it's near the end of the film, and it kind of wraps up some of what we've already been talking about quote rise, where Edmond basically he's finished his path of vengeance. He's gotten his family back again. All of the evildoers have gotten their comeuppance, and it ends with him and everybody he loves on Chateau d'If, where he's purchased the island for himself. And he looks out on the ocean and he says, "You were right, priest. You were right. This I promise you, and to God, all that was once used for vengeance will now be used for good. So rest in peace now, my friend." And it was a really interesting quote, because I think that, for me, and I think probably for some other people, one thing that I when I first watched the film that I thought was, well, the script is giving him warnings kind of don't go down the path of revenge. Don't become the man who you're not supposed to and stuff. And at first I was kind of like, oh, well, we don't see a lot of consequences of him committing these vengeance acts. It's not like he loses people or loses his love or anything like that. But I felt like it was interesting, because this quote to me kind of showcased that it wasn't so much that he was losing physically he wasn't losing his physical world from the revenge, but he was losing his soul, basically. And it was being chipped away at. And that I got the feeling from this quote that it was like he was completely, he was hollow and empty from the revenge. He didn't get the satisfaction that he was hoping to feel from it. And I'm not sure if you felt the same way or not, but that's what I kind of felt from this quote, where he decides to turn away from the bitterness and not allow it to run his life anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just is indicative of the impact that Faria had on him, and in even getting him to this point. I don't think that Faria would have ever approved of what Dantès did, honestly, and the path he took. I think he shows us a character that would have wanted him to take the high road from the very start, once he was out, and I think this is his way of sort of almost apologizing for that, in a sense, but also trying to honor the help that he gave Dantès. And not just that, I mean, it's so much more than just helping him escape and getting him motivated and kind of helping to renew his hope. We have to remember, he was an illiterate man, Dantès. Like, that is the whole reason that he's in this situation, is because he couldn't read and write. He was just very uneducated. And so they were able to take advantage of him. And Faria, teaches him about the world. He teaches him so much, to the point where he is able to then go and take on this whole new persona as a count, and nobody questions him, because he has this knowledge and he has the ability to put himself out as if he'd always been that way. And so he owes so much of who he is now to this one man that, yeah, I think it's kind of it's almost like getting saved. Honestly, it's almost like it's almost like he's making a decision. He's like, you know what? I have lived for me, and I've accomplished the things I wanted to accomplish, and I'm still finding myself a little empty and wanting. And so now, in a Christian faith, like I'm going to commit my life to Christ. So therefore I am going to live differently. And that feels like that's essentially what he is proclaiming here, which is an honorific to Ave Faria, because that's, obviously he's a priest. Like that's how he lives his life as well.
No, definitely. I 100% agree. And I think that was a great great example that you used, that it was almost like a salvation moment, that, he was going to be the man who Faria believed him to be, inside. And he decided to do that. Very, very good. So now moving into our final section for this review is a section called Under the Lens. And basically, this is where we kind of look at a few moments from the film that we enjoyed and that we thought basically propped the film up in a lot of ways, and that we felt stood out. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to toss it over to our guest, is that how would you sum up this movie in a few sentences? Like if somebody was asking you, hey, what do you think about this movie? What is it? How would you sum that up to them?
I'm going to cheat. And instead of tooting my own horn by coming up with something really smart, I'm actually going to read you Roger Ebert's quote, which is a couple of sentences that I don't think I could ever say it better than him. And he is the GOAT of film criticism. So I do often agree with him, and I do often revert back to like seeing what he said about a movie, regardless of whether our opinions match. But he had this to say: "The Count of Monte Cristo is a movie that incorporates piracy, Napoleon in exile, betrayal, solitary confinement, secret messages, escape tunnels, swashbuckling, comic relief, a treasure map, Parisian high society, and sweet revenge. And it brings it in at under 2 hours, with performances by good actors who are clearly having fun. This is the kind of adventure picture the studios churned out in the golden age. So traditional, it almost feels new." And I think that sums it up. And the only thing I would add to that would be the important aspect of how it affects a person with regards to their faith in the divine. I think a believer can get a lot out of this in a reflective way, because that's what it does for me. It makes me look in a mirror at the things that I've faced and how I've handled them, and when I've lost hope, and maybe where I could reconsider the depth of what I've, come up against, and how it's maybe not as bad as it seems. And then I think for a person not of faith can just find this honestly just an inspirational tale of hope and pushing through and fighting for what is right and justice, and learning to show mercy ultimately, and the satisfaction that comes with that as well. So there we go.
Oh, that was perfectly said. And honestly,
Okay.
that quote by Ebert, that was perfect. It was absolutely
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm
perfect.
saying. Like it's so hard to beat him.
It is. And I love that moment, where he mentions it and he says, and they do it in under 2 hours. That's incredible. And honestly, when you really do think about it, it is actually quite a feat that they pulled together that entire story, all of those thematic elements, all of that, the deeper reflections and everything in that type of runtime. It goes to show the strength of the writing, I think, and the directing. Because I never felt like it felt rushed at all.
Not once, no.
At all. So now for our second aspect of Under the Lens, this is going to be a fun one, I think, is the actor MVP. So, as we've talked about in this review, there was a lot of great performances. I don't think that there was a bad performance in this movie, and there was a lot that stood out. And so basically this section here can be, you can choose, any actor who was in it for any role. It doesn't matter if it was a lead, if it was a cameo, whatever part you felt lifted the film up and added some meaning or some comedic or whatever moment you felt that added to the film.
Well, I think it has to be Caviezel. Like, is I almost take him out of it because I mean he's the lead and he
Mhm.
carries so much of the nuanced character. He's the character that changes. And so that's the difficult performance, right? Is like you have to go from a point A to an actual point B. No one else really has to go through that. They pretty much are all staying the same. So I would say my favorite, I legitimately like what you just said is to me so true. I could pick anybody
Mhm.
and feel kind of, I mean, Henry Cavill's like, he's just there. It's
Mhm.
funny because he's baby Henry
Mhm.
Cavill, but like,
Uh-huh.
he doesn't have anything to do really.
Mhm.
He's fine. But
Mhm.
I think for me, Richard Harris stands out. And part of this is because I every time I cannot help but get, relate to other roles. And so I keep thinking, I'm like, okay, so this should have been a lot easier. You have Dumbledore and Jesus
Mhm.
stuck in a tower. Like literally just apparate and get out. I can't help but like put myself in Harry Potter world because of this major role that Richard Harris is famous for to me. But I think his value in his few scenes, and we've talked about it, he's been the focus of multiple quotes already and points of he helps to usher in the change in Dante's that allows him to go from one guy into another guy. And because of that, I think he's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and completely unself-serving, faithful, and just amazingly grandpa-like. And yet, it's incredible that he pulls it off because he is so elderly at this point,
Mhm.
and yet you believe with every fiber of your being that he would have survived this long and dug this tunnel out. He's just so smart and faithful. Like I said, I just love everything about his performance.
Mhm. I would agree. And actually, he was going to be the one that I, I was going to choose as well. Because like you said, I feel like you do have to kind of take Caviezel out of it a little bit just because, he's in almost every scene of the movie. He carries it with such weight and emotion and stuff. So I think, that is the easy one to say. But yeah, I would definitely choose, Richard Harris as well, in his role because it's such, as you said, it's such an important role because even though he's only in, the prison sequence, of this film, his presence is felt throughout the entire thing. His quote about, not going down the path of vengeance, the way that he teaches him and educates him, you feel that throughout all of the scenes. And you even feel it a little bit towards the end in the final duel where Edmond actually spares Fernand and he tells him, consider this mercy, and he's going to let him go, instead of killing him, and thankfully, so that we could get a duel, he comes back. But so I would agree with that. I think that Richard Harris he brought so much to that role. And it's like you said, at that age as an actor, he has nothing more to prove. He's shown what a fantastic thespian he is and everything. He could have totally phoned this in if he wanted to, and he didn't. He gave everything to it, and I think it was a fantastic acting job.
Absolutely.
So now this is one that I'm looking forward to because I'm excited to hear what your choices are. I know I have mine, and this is top scenes. So this is basically choosing what scenes you felt popped for you in the movie, and it can be one scene, it can be two, it can be three. You get to choose which ones you felt stood out the most.
Well, we've talked about quite a few of them,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, already. I would add that I really enjoy the moment between Fernand and Edmond when they have their sword duel after it's been revealed that he has betrayed him, and Edmond is experiencing that classic feeling of just hysteria, and he's lost and confused and doesn't understand what is happening. And Fernand, after they duel, quickly before he leaves, just picks up this chess piece and says, "To remember better days." And
Mm.
it stuck with me that he was doing this, and I didn't place it immediately. I actually had to stop and go back and kind of try and remember what was the purpose of that. Did I miss something? And I did. It's because Napoleon Bonaparte told them, we are kings or pawns.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was referencing that moment earlier in the film from them and that quote, and basically saying, remember when we were, both kings, but obviously now I am. And therefore you're essentially going to be a pawn. And it was just a moment that showed both the awful deep down nature of Fernand, but also slightly maybe a bit of remorse at the same time. So I really liked that. I also really enjoy the knife fight scene with Jacopo when
That's great. Uh-huh.
It feels like it comes out of nowhere, man. And I honestly, I think in a lot of movies, this would not work. It would be a tone shift that I would roll my eyes at. But for some reason in a swashbuckling film, it feels right. Same thing with Pirates. Pirates does similar, like, kind of jokey moments that follow up very serious story beats, and it just works. But it's so much fun the way that this whole interaction goes. The fact that, he gets a name. What does it mean? Driftwood. And it's such an awesome thing. Like I remember when I watched it that first time a couple years ago, not most recently for the podcast prep, but it took me a minute. When I saw Guzman show up, I was like, okay, what, like this guy does not fit in this movie.
Yeah.
But everything about this scene sets the stage for who he's going to become in his life and the importance of him. And I think it's a great introductory moment. And there's a line in the movie when he and Mercedes are able to get back together at the dance or whatever it is. When they see each other, you can tell that she recognizes him immediately. And it's right after we find out that she has married Fernand because she was pregnant with Edmond's son. And there's just a brilliant line of dialogue when Edmond is, the Count, and he's with Fernand, and he says, "May I steal your wife?" And he pauses. There's a pause, and then he goes, "For the waltz." And I just, oh my gosh, it was just like, I'm all about like that sort of type of, I don't know, that kind of dig and just like under the skin, even, unknown to Fernand, that he doesn't even realize what's being said to him and how it relates. But I loved it so much. I thought that was fantastic. And then the last one is another piece of dialogue. It's when he's with Mercedes and she reveals that she has been wearing this string engagement ring around her finger for 16 years. Beautiful representation, completely unrealistic. There's no freaking way. Absolutely. Part of my brain was breaking, going, come on. You like went back in the backyard and just put that on your finger 10 minutes ago. But I love the symbolism of it because that stuff gets to my heart. And she is appealing to him, and she's like, "Let go of your hate." Sounds like a Star Wars quote. And she's saying, take the escape that God has offered you. He has given us the opportunity for you to put this behind you. And Edmund says, "Can I not escape him?" And he's talking about God. He is still trying to push back. And she says, "No, he is in everything, even in a kiss." And I love the beauty of the dialogue and the picture it paints of faith and relationship and love. And she's kind of she's very much following up with the same kind of perspective that Abbe Ferrara would have had. And so I just think that was a really important scene that moved me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Those are all fantastic scenes, because the movie is just like chock full of great moments. And I think definitely, I would say like a few that stood out to me. There was one, it it was, I cannot remember the exact moment, but it was between Caviezel and Richard Harris, and it was in the prison. And it was just this kind of like, it was a moment of like humor, but also like hopelessness. And it was basically where it was a bit of dialogue where Edmond says that there are 72,519 stones in my walls. I've counted them many times. And then I love how Ferreira then replies and says, but have you named them yet?
Yes.
And, it's a great, it's a really funny moment. You know, it's one I laughed at and stuff, but I also loved just the kind of juxtaposing of kind of humor and hopelessness also, you know, that Ferreira had been exactly where Edmond had been. And that, you know, that you know, right after he says that, Edmond starts crying and he says, you know, don't worry, it'll pass, I promise you. And it was just a great interaction, I felt, between these two characters who are just experiencing just a living hell, basically, and just like how they're able to get through it. That was a scene I really liked. I thought it was just very well done. Then a scene that I absolutely love, and this is just one, is I love the balloon entrance moment.
Yes.
You know, it is just,
it's out of a Baz Luhrmann. It almost like, it reminds me of The Great Gatsby. I was like, he's the Great Gatsby.
It is so, you know, it's just, you know, it's this extravagant moment of wealth, and that you see, you know, all of the elite of Paris, you know, and then, you know, I love that there's just this silent moment, you know, and then you see the balloon coming with the fireworks, and then just that magnificent soundtrack of the chorus behind, and just, you know, and then just the moment, you know, where he steps out and he's just walking in the slight slow motion with his coat blowing. Oh, it's just magnificent. You know, it was just, you know, not only, like you said, you know, was it just filmed gorgeously and just a fantastic moment, you know, I loved, you know, I loved how it kind of showed almost, you know, a little bit of how the wealthy and powerful feel, basically, that they have no idea that this is a guy who has no formal education, you know, who was, you know, somebody who worked on a ship, basically. They were looking at him as, oh my gosh, look at this amazingly powerful, wealthy man who we've never heard of, and we all want to be like him, basically. And it was just,
and they don't
so
care.
Good.
It's a great representation of the whole problem with society is like, all they care is that he gave himself a name. He made it up. He's like, I'm the Count of this sandwich. I know it's not a sandwich. It's an island. That's where the name came from. I'm the Count of this random island. And because I have money and I can put on this lavish show, you believe me. And no one, I mean, they do at some point, you know, Villefort and Fernando, they do question it a little bit. But the people, that's the thing, is like, he is able to gain the trust of the whole of society simply by making himself out of money. And I think the film is critiquing that within the way it's showing it to us. Like, it's such a well structured and constructed reveal moment.
Definitely. And the final scene that I would say that I liked, and it was one that just stood out. It's a very quick moment near the end, and it's right at the end where Fernand gets his fatal stab wound from Edmond after their duel, and basically what ends up happening is he realizes, you know, he's mortally wounded, and he looks at Edmond and he says, what happened to your mercy? And Edmond replies, I'm a count, not a saint. And he's kind of a callback to Ferreira, where he says something similar. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's a similar structured quote. And what I thought was really interesting about that moment that I really liked was I thought it really showcased just who Fernand was as a person, that nothing in his life was ever his fault. He blamed everyone for everything else, that he was never responsible for anything. You know, that we have the moment where Edmond gives him mercy and allows him to go back, but his envy, his jealousy, his anger, you know, at not wanting to be the penniless guy who has nothing, and Edmond having everything, causes him to go back to his death. But even at that moment where he's dying, he still does not realize this is my fault. I'm the one who did all of this. I set in motion basically what resulted in my own death. At the end of his life, he's still blaming somebody else for it. And I don't know. I thought it was an interesting moment. And I thought it was powerful. So that was one that I liked.
Yeah, I mean, that whole scene is so well done too. I mean, it bookends the beginning where he says to Edmond, "Because you're the son of a clerk." He's like, "Why?" He says, "Because you're the son of a clerk, and I'm not supposed to want to be you." And then when they are about to have that sword fight, he says, I cannot live in a world where you have everything and I have nothing," because he's basically given the opportunity to not do this. And it's a matter of status, wealth, prestige. Like, he simply cannot accept that his life is just enough. And that is juxtaposed the entire movie by the journey that Edmond goes on. And the fact, I mean, he had everything taken away, and he did find meaning in life and continuing on. Who's to say that Fernand couldn't do that, right? It would have looked different, obviously. It would have been a very different world for him, but it's a tragedy that some people can't. It shows you there's two ways it could go. You can either retain your faith and your hope and push through that, or you cannot and let it crush you and ultimately lead to your death.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great thing that you bring up, that he could have gone out and found redemption and found a new life if he wanted to, because that is exactly what happened with Edmond. And how even at the end, Edmond says that he realizes at the end when he's leaving, Chateau for the last time, that he realizes that all of his wealth and all of that doesn't matter to him, that he realizes that's not what's important, his possessions and what he's accumulated in his life. It's who he is as a person and the people around him. So yeah, I think that's a great moment. So now, for our final element in Under the Lens, which is our grading of this film. Now, I have down, because I do a 1 to 5 star, but feel free to use whatever metric that you choose to use for your reviews and your grading. How do you grade the Count of Monte Cristo?
Oh boy. So on my scale, on my ratings, I do 1 through 5, but I don't do half stars. I've done away with them because it forces me to make hard choices. And this is it doesn't actually happen that much anymore. Like, I feel pretty confident that most things are a 3 because I like most movies. And then a 4, I really got to love you and want to rewatch you to be a 4. I got to think something's exceptional. And then a 5 is just pretty darn rare now, which is what I structured my ratings to be like. This is a borderline 5 for me. I mean, it's a movie that I feel like if I was to watch it again, it could get there. I honestly, I struggle to figure out what it is that is keeping it from being a perfect movie to me. If I can't pinpoint it out loud, like, it makes me wonder what it is that's holding me back. I think maybe there's a little bit of the pacing for me with once he's the Count, and kind of between that and the end, I think it doesn't always have the propulsion that I want it to have, even though I like all the story beats. That was another great scene we didn't mention, by the way, but just real quickly, the way he manipulates and sets up the son to be fake kidnapped by his pirate friends, and his pirate captain walks out of the shadow, like, it's them. No one watching the movie doesn't think it's them, but when he walks out of the shadow with this like smirk on his face, tossing coin, it's just it's so like Swashbuckler. It's what you want out of this kind of movie.
Absolutely. It was a crazy, because like you said, I knew from the moment he started fighting him that it was them. But that reveal, though, like you said, when he comes out of the shadows, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
So I'm going to cheat, because I'm going to go 4.5 because this isn't my scale, so I don't have to train in my own rules. I'm going to say 4.5 and break my own rules, because that's kind of really how I feel right now. Like, it is right on the verge of being an all-time favorite. Maybe when I buy that Blu-ray that you send me the link for and I dig it, because that's what usually happens when I know the history of a movie, and I love love, love, love behind the scenes and making of documentaries on films. It always elevates a movie for me. Maybe that'll push it over the top.
Mhm.
But so I'll go 4.5 for now.
Okay, so I ended up giving it looking at my letterbox here because I haven't written my review yet of it. That'll probably be coming in the next few days. But yeah, I do give half stars for my movies. And so I gave this one a 4.5 as well. It was very, very close to what you said for me of like the perfect movie of a 5. It was extremely close. Because it's definitely going to be a movie I rewatch, for the rest of my life. And definitely a movie that I share with people and such. And I feel like, there was just a few minor moments that kind of lowered it down from a 5. Like you said, on further rewatches, over the years, it might go up to a 5 for me. But I was the same way as you with like the pacing a little bit, that there was, I believe it was between the second and the third act, I want to say leading into the final, like basically when he's carrying out his revenge against everybody.
Yep.
That I felt like there was a few moments of that where it felt a little rushed, because up until that point, the first 2 acts, the film was very well paced, and it was very much it was taking its time, setting everything up. And then it kind of sped up a little bit right at the end, that it kind of felt like maybe, I don't know if maybe there was a, where they Disney might've asked for, for a certain runtime or something. I'm not sure. So like, I feel like maybe if the film would have had an extra 10 minutes of padding, maybe, or an extra 15 minutes, I think it probably would have easily been a 5-star for me. But just so for right now, I give it that 4.5, but by no means do I consider that pacing to greatly hurt the movie at all. I think it's still magnificent, and I think it's still, very, very, very near perfection. Very near.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So moving into final thoughts here. What are your final thoughts on this film?
Watch it. I don't know that I have too much more, honestly, that we haven't covered. I just think it really is fantastic. And if you haven't seen it, so if you're in the 30s, 40s age range, which I am, and you haven't watched it since you were a teenager, or if you're younger and you came around after this movie's heyday and you haven't gone back and watched any of these old Kevin Reynolds swashbucklers like this, or Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, go check these movies out, because they really are a lot of fun. And I would throw some of the other ones in there that are not as good as this, but like The Man in the Iron Mask, which is a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. You've got The Three Musketeers, which is a fun swashbuckling adventure movie. There are movies like this that I just don't think that they get talked about or mentioned enough, because Hollywood doesn't make things like this very often anymore for us. I can't remember really the last time we got something like this outside of like a Pirates sequel. And so I think there is such a place for this in the cinematic world, and I would love people to help bring it back. So go watch this, talk about it, share it, show it some love. But I think it's just such an underrated, great movie.
Definitely, and I echo Aaron when I say, definitely go watch the movie. It's one you will not be disappointed in. You're gonna have a great time. It challenges you to think a little bit deeper, but it also gives you that popcorn excitement, that you get from watching like other movies. So definitely check it out. And it really is a great I don't want to say rendition, but it's a great ode to, the swashbuckler films of old. It's like, I grew up watching a lot of, like black and white, movies and like pirate movies from the 30s and 40s. And, this reminded me of those in all the best ways. It's like I adored, Errol Flynn's, Captain Blood, the Seahawk, all those great movies that had the revenge, the sword fighting. It was just awesome. And you could clearly tell that the screenwriter had a love for that genre as well, because he poured all of that love into this movie. And and we don't get a lot of swashbucklers anymore. There's they still exist every now and then, but outside of the Pirates franchise, as you said, we really haven't had a movie of this quality, that really harkens back to that golden age of Hollywood swashbucklers. So definitely, after you watch this one, go check out some of those older ones, with Errol Flynn and some of those other ones, because I think you'll have a great time with them. And honestly, Aaron, I'm so glad that you brought up the Three Musketeers, because
Oliver
that is
Platt,
the
Kiefer Sutherland. I mean,
oh,
come on, it's a classic.
it is a classic, and I actually had revisited that one back. I want to say it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, because I was working from home, and so I was watching a lot of movies as I was working. It's like, I was just had my laptop on the couch, and I would just have like a movie going, and I'd remembered seeing this one as a kid, and so I turned it on. And then I ended up stopping it, because I was like, okay, I want to actually devote more attention to this, and yeah, it's just a great movie. So that's another one, guys, definitely check out. It's a criminally underrated swashbuckler film. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our review of the Count of Monte Cristo. I hope you all enjoyed it, and feel free to check out other episodes that we have of Under the Lens. We have a bunch of reviews. We have interviews. It's a lot of different flavors for whatever you may enjoy. You can check us out on all of the major podcast platforms. We're on all of them. You can also check out my Twitter account at Byron Lafayette. I use it semi-frequently. I'm also on Vero at Byron Lafayette, and also very active on Facebook. So if you want to interact with me, that's probably the best place to. And you can also check out, if you are listening to this and you're a fellow film critic, feel free to check out the Independent Film Critics of America. It's a relatively new critics association that I actually started, and we're growing fairly quickly. We have a lot of great people. Aaron is a member, as well as a lot of others. So definitely feel free to check that out. And like I said, if you're a film critic and you want to submit an application, the requirements and guidelines are right there on the website at indiecriticsofamerica.org. So Aaron, where can people find you? Where can people listen to your podcast? Where can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm fairly easy to find. The podcast is fairly easy to find under Feelin' Film. Luckily, I magically discovered a name that worked for me, or worked for us, I should say, 6 years ago. And it's Feelin, Feelin apostrophe film. And we have been around long enough that now you put that into a search engine in Google, and our stuff's going to come up first, which is everybody's dream for SEO. Yeah. But you can find me personally at Aaron L. White. That's my username pretty much everywhere. AARONELWHITE on Twitter, on Facebook. There's a Feelin' Film Facebook discussion group. Would love to have people come join there. You can find that in my links all over the place as well. That's my Instagram. It's my gaming system handle. Like, it's my Letterboxd username. So you can find me everywhere using that.
Excellent. And yeah, and definitely everyone check out the Feeling Film podcast, and also check out the Facebook group. It's a lot of fun. I've been a member of it for, I want to say, going on probably 3 years now, and just I've had some fantastic conversations about film, and had some great debates, and there's a lot of great people in that group. So definitely check that out. Well, guys, as I said, that concludes this wonderful discussion that we had on the Count of Monte Cristo. I'm so glad that you all joined us on Under the Lens. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see you all on the next episode.